Hey folks, welcome back to the channel for another edition of our Pro-Am Doubles Disc Review, where I will serve as the amateur with the slightly worse form and slightly lower arm speed, and my man Matt Gibbons here will represent the pro with the finer form and the big boom sauce of an arm. That way you're going to be able to get kind of a full read on how this might fly for you, depending on where you're at in your own world as far as arm speed and experience and stuff like that goes. But without further ado, we have to give a shout out to our partner who helps make this all possible, Saraland Pharmacy. I'm sure you're surprised a pharmacy sponsored this video, but Saraland Pharmacy is actually the best disc golf store in Southern Alabama. They carry a wide variety of discs from all the top manufacturers, including Innova, Discraft, Discmania, and all the Trilogy brands, as well as MVP and Axiom. They also carry plenty of plastic from lesser-known brands such as Lone Star Disc and Thought Space Athletics. Their pricing is fantastic. And speaking of pricing, they have a very robust used disc section where you can get some lightly used plastic for a fantastic price. And you can also pick up various disc golf equipment that'll help you along the way. So if you're in Mobile County or any of the surrounding areas, or heck, even if you're on the Eastern Shore, definitely pass on by the Saraland Pharmacy, as they have a wide variety of equipment that I'm sure you'll love. It's definitely worth the trip. You certainly won't regret it. All right, so now that we're back from that message from our partner, what disc are we throwing today, Mac?
We are throwing the new Charger from Innova Discs. This disc comes in at a 13.5 -1.2, so kind of a more overstable counterpart to say a Strike, which has been marketed as kind of the AM's destroyer. So yeah, excited to check this one out.
Yeah, okay, so I'm going into this one with a little bit of skepticism, actually, Mac, because I feel like the way that they marketed this was that you're combining a Strike with a destroyer. And for me, that must be like a really small niche gap to have in your lineup. I think they're just trying to crank out disc personally, because for me, if you want something overstable from Innova, you throw a destroyer. If you want something that's less stable than a destroyer, then you have the Strike, you have the Turn, or you could just throw a Wraith, a lower speed destroyer, basically. So I have a feeling this is not going to fly too differently than, say, a destroyer for someone like me with a lower arm speed. Just because even though it's technically supposed to be less overstable than a destroyer, because it has a wider rim, that means it takes more to get it up to speed, which for me, I think will kind of just equal out and wind up flying like a destroyer for me. Whereas my guess is for someone like Mac, who's going to serve as our pro, it's probably going to fly like a less stable destroyer, right? Like a Strike with more integrity or something like that, I guess. But that's all speculation. We'll find out here soon. But first off, make sure you go give Mac a follow. All of his socials are down below. He puts out some great content. High-level player, also gets lessons in the area, so be sure to check that all out down below. But without further ado, let's sling these, huh?
Yep.
All right, so what I'm going to do for some comparisons here is first I got an Emperor, which is basically supposed to just be like a slightly less stable destroyer for most people with a slightly wider rim. I then actually have a stock Sakibot destroyer that we're going to throw here, and then I have the Chargers, and we're going to do a little bit of a comparison. My guess is that this will be the least stable of all for me, and that these will fly basically the same. But let's find out. So for me, that's exactly how I expect a stock destroyer to fly, pretty overstable with my arm speed. And that one really isn't that seasoned, to be honest. Like, it still has a lot of integrity. So let's compare that now to the Chargers and see if there's actually a difference or not. I mean, as I expected, almost virtually identical flights. I'm gonna try to get over on this one a little bit. mean, I can tell you now they're all literally right next to each other. I don't even have to walk up to them. I'll give you a distance if you want. But as I suspected, there's a couple different things going on here. Even though the Charger is being marketed as a strike meets a destroyer, and therefore leading you to believe that it's going to be a less overstable destroyer, or simply a more overstable strike, however you want to look at it, I think that what happens is for someone like me with a lower arm speed, because I can't get that faster disc up to speed, it flies like the lower speed destroyer for me. It's almost identical. I think the other thing that's happening here is, for me personally, and my hand size, those 13 speed size rims have always been a little uncomfortable for me to get like a good grip on and feel like I can get like a really good throw out of it. That's why I typically throw like 11 speeds or 12 speeds at most. So things like the Czar or the Wraith or something like that's kind of like my top end on rim width. So that's kind of what we're looking at. I'll go get some measurements for you. We'll come back and we'll see if Max sees a difference. All right, so basically it went down exactly how I thought. The Emperor was the least stable of all, and it flew the feathers at about 315 feet. Next up was this stock destroyer that flew furthest at about 310 feet. And then the two Chargers were basically right next to each other, and they were probably about 290 to 280-ish. So definitely the shortest of all. So I definitely was able to get more distance out of the Emperor due to its stability, and more distance out of this destroyer, I think, due to the speed and the rim width in comparison to the Charger, where because it's at 13 speed, I couldn't get it up to speed as much, and the wider rim just wasn't as comfortable to me to throw with. So basically, for me, as an AM, if you throw a Charger, you're basically throwing a destroyer.
All right, so now I'm going to give it a shot. I suspect what Dustin said, like with the higher speeds and stability, is correct. As the disc rim gets wider, it gets exponentially harder to get the proper disc flight out of it. So we'll see how it acts with a higher arm speed. I'm going to start with the Emperor, go Destroyer, and then Charger. Let's go Charger.
Literally the Emperor.
Yeah, got about a similar amount of distance or a similar amount of turn as the Emperor, but went a touch farther. All right, I'll try and lay into this one. All right, so after measuring that, the Emperor came in at about 420, 425 feet. That one, if you remember, held anhyzer pretty much the whole way, so didn't exactly get a full flight. The Destroyer got more of a full flight, ended up around that 440 mark. The Charger that I threw with the normal like 70% power went about 450, and the one that I really laid into, though it was a little low, it still came up about 15 feet farther at around that 465 mark. So as for the Chargers, definitely discs you can put power into. You can definitely see the stability change with the higher arm speed and the more power. So anyway, let's do our final reviews with it.
All right, so to give a final review, my suspicions as an AM were kind of answered in that, for me personally, this disc was no different than throwing a destroyer. Even though it's supposed to be slightly less stable, and for some reason in their marketing they described it as being a blend of a destroyer and a strike, I don't detect any identity of a strike at all in this disc as an AM with my arm speed. For me, because of the wider rim, because it's at 13 speed, it flies just like a destroyer. The one difference I will note, and we didn't catch this on film, but when I did throw some forehands, I would say that this flipped up a little bit more on a forehand than the destroyer did. So maybe when it comes to like torque resistance as an AM, maybe this has a little bit more flip in that forehand category. But when it comes to backhands, I literally could not tell a difference at all between this Charger and a stock destroyer. For me, it was basically the same, with the Emperor being a little bit flippier, which is kind of what I anticipated. So what I would say is, if you're an AM, this is probably not the disc for you unless you're just looking for like a utility overstable disc, like to fight winds and stuff. And honestly, you'd probably be better off just getting a destroyer for the smaller rim so you can get it up to speed, and so maybe it'll feel a little bit more comfortable in your hand. So that's kind of my recommendation with the lower arm speed.
Yeah, so I definitely noticed a difference in it, and like we said, that's probably due to the difference in arm speed. Actually, it's definitely due to it. Despite the larger rim and the difference in speed, you do need a significantly higher arm speed to get this up to speed to fly the way it's meant to. I would liken this to when the Shrikes first came out. They came out with a very overstable run, which was the sought after run for any professionals throwing Shrikes. Nowadays you find any stock Shrikes and they're generally a little too understable for any pros to throw. But if you're a higher arm speed player and you're looking for something that's going to give you a lot of turn, maybe be a tailwind bomber, this could be a disc for you. It would also be probably a good distance forehand disc, maybe a flip up to flat type of thing, something decent for the woods if you enjoy throwing fast stuff in the woods. But like Dustin said, for the AM side, I probably would not recommend this disc. I would say go with something slower, or if you really want a 13 speed that feel great in your hand, I would stick to the Shrikes. For the pro players, there's definitely a slot in your bag that this can fill, and so I would recommend giving it a try.
Well, there you have it. We appreciate you all for tuning into the content. Again, be sure to go give Mac a follow. Maybe hit him up for a lesson if you're in the area. His links will be down below. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel to catch future content, and we'll catch you next time.